Hi there. This week I'm going to make another denim jacket using the Mimi G pattern S8845, and I'd like you to learn along with me. I'm going to divide this video up into 7 sections. First, I'd like to go over the pattern pieces itself from the pattern so that you understand the basic information about how it fits together, and so I do as well. Next, I'd like to go over the front pieces, so that would be the 3 front panels. And after that, I am going to sew the pockets, the breast pockets. Then I will move on to the welt pockets. And then I will continue on with the yokes and the back and the sleeves, and finally ending with the cuffs and the collar and the waistband. So let's start with the pattern instructions and review the pieces that I've already cut out. These are the first 3 pieces you will need. Piece 1 is the front, piece 2 the middle front, and piece 3 the side front. The important markings here that you will use a lot: this is where your welt pocket is going to go. This right here is where your breast pocket is going to go, along with that V there, and finally over here. So the breast pocket will cover all 3 of these panels, and then this panel also has the line for the buttons, so the buttons go on that side. So you'll start by sewing these 3 pieces together to make one side of the front, and then the same thing for the other. For this make, I am using a black wool, which is fairly thick. I haven't tried this pattern on the black wool before, so hopefully it'll work out. So the next step in the project is to put on the breast pocket. That would be this one here. This is the pocket flap, and this is the pocket facing. So the pocket actually goes on the inside. So what I chose to do is to use a lighter quilting cotton that will be easier for my sewing machine to sew through. So that wool is pretty thick, so I chose a lighter fabric here because it won't be seen on the outside. The wool, however, is on the flap, and I'm not sure how the facing will look, so I actually cut both wool and cotton out of that. So I'll see how it looks when I get to that point. So that's the breast pocket. These 2 pieces are for the welt pocket, and I did the same thing here. The welt pocket goes on the inside, so I just used a very light, a heavier quilting cotton instead of that wool. The important part about the welt pocket is this right here. You want to make sure you mark all of these lines on your fabric because those are going to be very important. All right, here's the facing piece. So after we put on these 2 pockets on the front and the side, this here is where the welt pocket goes. We move on to the yoke. This piece number 12 is the back yoke, and this piece number 7 is the front yoke. So you attach the front yoke to the front, and then you put together the back pieces 11 and 10. You just sew those together. This is actually cut on the fold, so it folds out. You have 2 of these pieces and 1 of those pieces. Sew those together, and then you attach your back yoke right here. So now we sew the shoulder tops together, and we have most of the garment together except for the sleeves. We go ahead and put those on next. This pattern has a top sleeve, number 15, and an undersleeve, number 16. The important thing to note right here is this is for the cuff. The directions will come later, but make sure you do cut that cuff out there like the pattern says. And then the final step is just to put on the cuffs, number 17, the collar, number 13, and this is the waistband, number 18. As well as this is a tab that goes on the waistband, and this is a loop that also goes on the waistband. So that's basically it. All of these pieces together will make the jacket. So now let's start sewing it. I've transferred the markings from my pattern pieces to my fabric. I use this, I just got this actually. It's Madame Sew's roller marker. It's very cool. This is powder inside. That's powdered chalk. And it just comes out very neatly on this roller. Here, let me show you. So you just roll it along. This is the easiest marking utensil I've found yet. I've tried those pens and they always seem to run out of ink. And I tried the tailor's chalk and I can never get that to work. But this powdered pen is awesome. I'll link that in the description below. But that's what I use. You can see now where the pocket's going to go, right? And then this will be where your hand goes into your welt pocket. So all you have to do now is make sure, we're just going to sew these two seams down the middle. And also to give you guys an idea, this rectangle right here, that's where your pocket facing is going to go. It's going to go right like that, and you just flip it over into the facing. So I hope it's all starting to make sense. What I'm going to do now is just pin it together, each side, and then go ahead and sew it on the machine. So I'll be back after I do that. Oh, I forgot to mention that I also highlighted my markings in the white. So these are all my notches. Usually I just clip them. So you can see I just cut them like that, but I thought to show you where they are, you can really see them easily. And actually I can too. So basically you just want to line up these notches and these double notches here. Okay, I finished sewing together the 3 panels. I wanted to pause and show you guys how lumpy this is. So I haven't pressed it, but this is what your fabric might look like if it's really thick. So don't worry about that. It's normal. I also did the other side. So you can see I made a mistake here. I actually drew my markings on the wrong side and had sewn it all together. I had to actually pick this apart. Try not to get confused with yours, or you'll have to unpick and sew one side again as well, just like I did. All right, so the next part, what you're going to do is this side, you're going to press the seams in outward, both sides. You're going to press all of those outward. And then the next step is to actually start your top stitching. And you're going to start top stitching all the way down here, catching that outside. So let me do 1/2 and I'll show you what it looks like. The top stitching is done. I guess I sped ahead. I was going to show you, but I actually did both pieces. See how nice and flat it is now with a good press and some top stitching. Basically, for the top stitching, you go down the seam about 1/8 inch away from the edge, and then another 1/4 inch of the edge away. You can see I'm a little lopsided, but in the distance you can't tell, trust me. One other thing I want to mention is for the top stitching, I set my thread to a 4 because especially with this fabric, it's pretty thick. So you can see that even with a 4, the stitches are sort of disappearing into the fabric. For this project, generally I used a 4, even for the hems. So you can see the back, I actually serged the back seams. I don't have any black serger thread, or I would have changed. No, I wouldn't. But you can see how the top stitching really holds down the edge there, so it's going to make it a really sturdy garment. So next up is the pocket piece. It's going to fit nicely in the back, and then we'll do some top stitching around where the chalk line is, and then we will put the pocket flap on. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those pieces so we can see how to configure them. Okay, we're ready to sew on the pocket. As a reminder, there are 3 pocket pieces: the pocket facing, the pocket itself, and the overflap. Now, if we take a closer look at the facing, you will see this stitching line. What you're going to do is, I've got mine in wool and in cotton. I am going to try the cotton first to see if I like that. But basically what you're going to do is fold up the edges here, do a 5/8 or do a seam right there. I'm going to serge the bottom. I'm going to serge the bottom, and then all you do is, gosh, that powder has come off. All you do is you will stitch it around here, and the pocket itself actually attaches to the back. You'll do the same thing here, is you'll fold it in to do a seam allowance. And actually what I've done, I prefer this method sometimes, is I've made 4, I cut out 4 pockets instead of 2. And so instead of doing a seam, which can be a little hard to do when you fold it over, I'm actually just going to sew 2 together and just fold them inside out. So that should work better. Then you just sew them right here. From the underside, you will stitch them all around with your double stitching. The pocket will be on the bottom, and then you just come up and sew your top flap across the top. I finished that quick step, turned in these seam allowance 1/4 inch on each side, and I serged the bottom for both of the pocket flap facings. The next step, with right sides together, so this is the right side, and that is the right side. You put your right sides together, and then you just sew along the markings. Then after that, you will clip your corners and trim around here and just flip it over to the back side. Here's the before and after pocket. So basically what I did is I cut out 4 pocket pieces, I sewed 2 of them together, and then I clipped the corners and then turned it inside out right here, and this is what the end result looks like. I did this instead of what the instructions tell you to only use 1 pocket and to fold it over and do that seam allowance, because I just find that this method is easier. You don't have to fuss with the seam allowance because it's all tucked inside nicely. You can do this on any kind of pocket. Also, since I did this on the cotton, the fabric isn't too thick, so I think this will work out quite well. The next step that you do is, see, I didn't do the facings really well. So this part, I think the fabric was really thick, so it doesn't look the best there, but that's okay. So I take my pocket, I'm on the inside, the wrong side of the fabric. The pocket no longer has a right or wrong side. And I just place it right here on top, and make sure that you catch that seam in the front, because you need to make sure those are sewn together. What you're going to do is place it on top here, and then you're going to sew right along this edge all the way around your pocket from the underside. This is actually going to be your top stitching, but for this step, it's much easier to do it on this side so you can follow your pocket around. Once you've gone through once, you come again 1/4 inch around here and just do another layer of top stitching, which in this case is bottom stitching. The way I try to keep my top stitching straight is I put my needle all the way to the left, go one way around, and then I put it all the way to the right and go the same way around. I had a little snafu with my buttonholer. It wasn't working, so I made these 2 buttons by hand. Hopefully when I get to the front buttons, I'll have that fixed, but I just wanted to show you. I sewed, there's 2 flaps per pocket, and you just sew the front and the back flap together on these 4 sides. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. Leave this side open, and then you just flip it around so that it looks like this. Okay, so what you want to do next is sew your pocket together. There's 2 parts of the pocket, and my buttonhole broke, so I have to do this one by hand. So sew it together, and then put your buttonhole in right there, because you're not going to be able to do that after you attach it to the garment. So once you sew it together, you're going to flip it around. You'll flip it around so that it looks like this, nice and flat. And I've actually top stitched this one already. So you flip it around, you top stitch around the edge and then 1/4 of an inch in. Don't look at my sucky top stitching, still learning how to do that. But go ahead and do that, and then just baste it across the top of your pocket, and you have finished the pocket. The next step is the Welt Pocket. This pocket is the one where you shove your hand in right there. This is a very complicated step, and the first time I did it, it didn't turn out exactly the way it should have, but I found that this is also very forgiving. So if you don't get it exactly lined up, it's okay. It's not like the breast pocket where it can look a little off, but even that's okay. So basically what you do is very important to mark this stitching line on both this is your pocket lining, and this is the back of your bodice piece. Quick note, I decided I really don't like this chalk anymore, because look at that. It's just so messy, and already my lines are falling off. So I really don't know what to use as chalk. If anybody has a recommendation, I would love it, because so far I've had 3 strikes. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, see how these 2 match? You want to line that up. The best way to do that is to take a pin on the welt lining and then pin it right through there so that you know those lines are matching up. And go ahead and do that for all 4 spaces. So I've noticed that sometimes my tracing is off, so I just try to make sure that it's roughly okay. So now I feel like this one needs to be a little more out. Okay, so now that I have those pinned in, what I'm going to do is pin the rest. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to sew along this line and along that line. And that's it. You don't need to do any more right now. So I'll go ahead and do that step. I finished sewing on the lining of the welt pocket. You can see right here, 1 stitch line here and 1 stitch line there. That's the back. And this is what the front looks like. Just 1 stitch line here and 1 there. The next part is you have to find your facing piece, which I have marked, and you fold it over. You're going to fold it over and iron it. Make sure there's a dot there and a dot there. Make sure those match and just iron it across. Now that I've pressed it to match up those 2 dots, what you do next is you line up, you flip this over this way so that the seam is pressing that way, and you line it up with this left mark. You put that in right there. You line those 2 edges up, put a pin in there and a pin in there to make sure they line up, and then you're just going to sew right across there. A good way to check to make sure that you've pinned it correctly is your welt pocket is going to open up like that. So if that looks the same, then you've pinned it the right direction. All right, we're coming up to a big step in the Welt Pocket production here. I've sewn this on. You can see that other stitching line right there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the other Welt Pocket. Mine right and wrong sides are the same, but you'll want to match. This is the right side to the right side of your Welt Pocket. What you're going to do first is pin this back because you don't want to get that cut up in the sewing you're going to do. So I'll just take, these are my favorite pins, really long ones. Just go ahead and pin that back. And you're going to line up this stitching line with these marks here, the ones farthest to the right. So just go ahead and stick a pin through there and then through there so you know you are lining it up correctly. And then take another one and stick it through there and then right at that other stitching line. So what you're going to do is take it back to the sewing machine and just stitch right along here. Again, right sides together, pin that out of the way. You're going to sew this down. The idea is once you sew this down, we're going to cut open this middle here and flip everything to the wrong side. So that's why you do this on the right side and then you flip everything to the wrong side. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll sew it down and then show you what it looks like. Oh, I wanted to point something else out real quick here. Is see how this looks all wonky? It's going off into space. Once you flip that around, it's going to come and lie evenly at the bottom of your jacket. So it should look a bit like it's taking off into space. All right, now comes the exciting part. I have, here, let me show you on this one. So I've stitched down both sides here. This is the lining on the wrong side. And I've done the same here. This is the outer layer on the right side. So now you can see this is the facing right here. This is your pocket right here. And what you're going to do is pin down each side like I've done here, okay? Pin down each side because now the exciting part is going to happen. You're actually going to, where this line is from there to there, you're going to cut that open. And then you're also going to cut where these V's are as well. So only here, all the way down there, and here. If you want to see what that looks like on the back, you would cut down the middle here, stop there, and cut where these two V's are. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I wanted to add another tip here. My fabric was so thick I had trouble getting it with my scissors, so I'm actually just using a seam picker, seam ripper, and it's easier to just stick that in there and wiggle it through to start. So I'll go ahead and just do a little bit more, and then I'll come back with my scissors to be more precise. All right, once you've slashed it open, you take out your pins. This is the right side up. You've got this gruesome looking slash right there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to flip your pocket and your facing to the wrong side. So you just stick it right through that hole and stick this through the hole as well. Let me go ahead and neaten it out on this side. You just pull it through so that it lines up. Where's the welt? All right, I pressed it in the front. So that is your welt pocket. The next step is a bit, the next step is a bit hard to see because you actually have to fold up your fabric, you fold up the pocket, you fold up this, and see that little triangle there? That triangle? You actually want to stitch through all of these layers. So nothing else. Can you kind of see what I'm doing? So I have that triangle, and then I'm just going to stitch right like that, and that'll just hold it down in the front. Okay. All right, so the next step, once we have the front secure, mine isn't the best, still working on that. The next step is you want to do your top seam and your side seam. So all you have to do there is to fold this over your seam allowance so that you have that, and here as well. See, I've folded those over for my seam allowance. And what you're going to do is you do not get your front panel in there. You're just going to take it to the machine and sew this across the top, and then this down the side as well. Just make sure you don't get your front panel caught in that. And so, all right, I hemmed these two sides together, and I also basted this side together and basted the bottom to the front hemline. Now I'm going to be perfectly honest. This is a bit wonky here. I didn't exactly match these up, but I am just going to go ahead and trim that because that happened to me before. It didn't quite line up properly, but it still turns into a nice pocket, right? As long as you can get your hand in there and it feels all cozy, it should be a nice pocket. Okay, so we're done. We're done with the welt pockets. All right, have both of them done. And what we're going to do next is work on the yokes. All right, so we have completed the welt pocket and the top pocket. So the next step is to put the yoke on to the top. So I am going to grab number 7, unpin it. And what you do now is you might want to serge your edge here, but all you do right now is to pin it like that, sew across. I think I will serge that once I'm done sewing, and then flip it over to complete this section. Let's just pause for a mistake I made. I got this side right? So that looks great. It's supposed to go, there's the arm, there's the neck. I sewed this side together thinking I had it the right way. But wait a sec, there's the neck, and this is wrong. I actually think I might have to cut this piece again. So learn with me, right? So this is what I should have done in the first place to figure out which direction, because I always get this wrong. So this one is correct. And then all I should have done is taken this piece, the other one, and be like, oh, okay, well, that makes a neck, right? So all I have to do is then flip it over. And so that somehow looked strange to me when I tried to do it without this piece, but now it makes perfect sense because if I sew along there, voila, I'll get it the right way. I'm gonna have to clean up a bit of the fluff, but I think I'm gonna fix my mistake. All right, here comes the fun. So I serged this. Thankfully, I serged it after I found my mistake, and I pressed the seam up that way towards the top, because what you're going to come do now is you have to top stitch 2 rows across here. Here's what the finished product looks like. So I top stitched all across here. This is really thick material, so it was a bit hard to do. But I think, again, once it's all put together, and it's for my husband, he's gonna love it, so. Okay, we're ready to start on the back. So grab number 10 and number 11, that's your back piece and your side back. Make sure you have your markings. And all you do here is, I'll get it right this time. You take your back and your side backs and you sew them together right there and there, just down there. So you will have a finished back, and then you take your yoke piece, number 12, and go ahead and sew it along the top. So I will go ahead and do that right now. I got all of these together, and see, I can't even remember what this is called. Serged the seams and pressed them that way. So finally it looks nice. But what I'm gonna have to do now, which I know I can't do right now, is, okay, the seams are going this way. So guess what? It's top stitching time again. So I have to top stitch on this side, a 1/4 of an inch down and right by the edge. And I've found, for me, after doing this a while, it's actually easier for me to do the one that's farther away from the seam first and then go back and do the second one. But I'm gonna have to pick this up a little later. You won't notice, but I need a break. That's a really important lesson to learn, is take your break when you feel like you can't sew anymore. All right, I'm glad I took a break because I got done with the top stitching on both sides. And so this part of the back is done. Grab your yoke piece. And what you're gonna do here is just go ahead and attach it across the top. After you attach it across the top, guess what? You press your seams up towards this part, and you go ahead and do 2 more rows of top stitch all the way across. So I'll come back and show you that. The back's together. Woohoo! It took like 1/8 of the time as the front, right? So it's pretty easy. I top stitched the yoke. It's all together. Everything on the other side is serged. I sort of like the way the white serger looks against the black. Okay, we're ready to finish the side of the front. So these are both of the front panels. I have them turned wrong side up, and I'm just gonna go ahead. I pressed this side already. I will do the same over on this side. Press it over your seam allowance. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna serge this first because it's very, the threads are coming undone. So let me go serge that and press over my seams. And then what we're gonna do next is press it one more time so that it makes a nice finish. Okay, this step is important, so I thought I'd explain it a little slower. I turned in that seam allowance. I went ahead and ironed this down. But now what you're going to do is, with the right side up, make sure you have these 2 markings here. Those 2 markings are very important, and they are from pattern piece 7. Those 2 circles right there. Because what's going to happen is you're going to fold this over, and where that circle is, I'm doing an extra large, you're going to sew like that and like that, just in this wee little bitty corner there. So on my front piece, I have those 2 markings. I did not put a chalk line all the way down the front, but I have these 2 markers for where I'm going to fold it. I'll go ahead and fold it over and then sew right here in the corner. You're going to clip the corner and then you're going to turn it inside out. I will come back before I clip the corner to show you guys. And what we're doing now is we're making that front facing. Okay, can you see how I just sewed there? Just this little corner right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the scissors. I shouldn't do this one-handed. There, I marked it so you can see. I'm going to take the scissors and cut into that corner. Do not go through your stitching. Now you want to trim that off a bit. And then I have it pinned, so I'm just going to take these pins out. Love my big pins. And then what you're going to do is, oh, I can't do it one-handed. You're going to flip it over. You flip the whole thing over. Hang on. All right, I'm trying again. So you see how I stitched right there? I clipped into that little area, just a very small square at the top, and that's where you match up your 2 dots. That's a very important step, because then what you're going to do is you just flip it over. Alexa is making a delivery. I don't know if you guys can hear that. All right. Thank you. Alexa, stop. My toilet paper arrived. All right, so what you do is you turn that over, and then you just turn over this whole thing. And then you're going to baste it down on this side. That is, make sure over here you get your pocket flap in there, because that's what's going to hold the pocket flap down. Baste it down right along here. And then you will turn it around and you will do your top stitching, follow the base stitch for 1 row of top stitching, and then for the second row, go in 1/4 of an inch in the other direction. And this will make our front. Later, we're going to finish this by putting the buttons and buttonholes in, but let's get this step done now, and then we're going to put the whole thing together. It's that time. We're ready to sew the front and back pieces together at the shoulder seam. So all you have to do there is right sides together. It's looking kind of nice. Go ahead and sew the shoulder seams together, and then I'm going to serge, and then you fold, iron your hem back towards the back of the jacket. After we finish that, we're going to go ahead and start the sleeves. I have undersleeve 16 and sleeve 15. So all you do here you're going to take the sleeve, flip it over here, match your notches, and then match this down there. So you just line it up like that. You're going to sew along here all the way down to just right about there. There should be a little mark that I don't have. So you just want to sew from here all the way down there. Stop right here, because then you are going to clip into the corner right here. I finished sewing that seam along here. I stopped there. And what you're going to do right now is take your scissors. This side should be shorter than that side. That is correct, so that they will overlap. And now you just want to take your scissors and cut right into, not into the stitching line, but right up to the stitching line. The next part that you have to do is you fold these over twice. These are going to be a little bit of a hem, so you fold it once and you fold it twice, and then you can go ahead and stitch across. Let me just show you I've completed this one already. It might be easier to see. So you fold it once and twice, and you just stitch across to make a neat little hem there. And then these are going to become where you put your cuffs on. You almost missed the part where I sew in the sleeve. The sleeve goes into this part here. What you do is you find your sleeve. It's all finished. You gather it. You put in some gathering stitches at the top. And then with right sides together, you fit it in just like that. Actually, let me show you on this side because this is complete. So you fit the sleeve in this curve, and then you go ahead and you just stitch around the top, your gathering stitches, and all around. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the other sleeve and then serge this as well, and then this part of the sleeve will be done. I have sleeves and attached to the jacket. So all I have to do now is to sew it together right here. So I'm just going to flip it out, do the wrong side, and do my seams all the way under the shoulder and down the side here. And then we will be ready to put on the collar, the cuffs, and the waistband. Almost done. Hi there. It is time to show you why I grouped the cuffs, the collars, and the waistband together. And the reason is that you follow the same process for the cuffs, number 17, the collar, number 13, and the waistband, number 18. And I thought it would be best to show you all at once so that you can understand how these are put together. Starting with the collar. Now here is what, I'm sorry, this is the cuff. Here is what the cuff looks like. It has one notch up there. And the basic instructions are I've done one up here so that you can see it. But all you're going to do, you're going to fold right sides together like that. So if you see in this example, I've folded the right sides together. Let me see if I can do this better for you. Okay, so right sides together like that. And then on your unnotched side, this side, you're going to fold over your seam allowance and press that down. So fold that over and press it down so that it looks something like this. And then what you're going to do is sew this down right here on the edge. Okay? After you sew it down on the edge, you're going to trim it. So you'll be flipping it right side out. So make sure that you clip that corner right there. You trim it. My material is a bit heavy, so this is going to be a little tricky to flip. But you just cut it off. Trim that little bitty corner. And then what you do is you just flip it right side out and you give it a good press. Voila, you have one cuff. See that? I'll show you eventually how to sew that to your sleeve as well. But before I go on, let me just point out how the collar is the same. So you have your two collar pieces, same thing, the right sides are together. I hope you can see because this is black. Oh, there's some good shadow. the right sides are together, and on this piece, I have folded up the seam allowance the same, 5/8 of an inch all the way across. And then what you're going to do, same thing you did with the collar, you're going to, so let me put it the right way so you guys can really see this. You're going to sew from here up like you did here, and then all the way across, and then down here. So you'll fold these two, you'll sew these two lines under, and then the same thing with the collar as the cuff, you just flip it over. Voila cuff. When I'm done with this, I'll flip it over and I'll have a voila collar. And then the last piece that is the same is your really long waistband. So you can see I've already folded it in half and ironed it and flipped up that seam. So all I'll do now is the same thing. I will sew this close. That's all you need to do here because it's one piece. And then I'll sew the other side close and flip it over. So the cuffs, the collar, and the waistband are very similar. Another step you'll need to do with the collar is to take this very small size 14. This is going to be the back loop that goes in the back of your collar. This is very tricky for me because I have such thick material, but all you have to do is fold it in half and then fold it in half again. I think I might do this one by hand, and then kind of basically, it's really hard to show you because this is so little. So you fold it in half, fold it in half again, and then fold it over, and then you're supposed to actually sew that down. And that's going to be that loop in the back between your collar and your back yoke. All right, now I have pressed the collar, turned it inside out. That's going to be the collar. This is one cuff. This is the really long band. And here is the sleeve. So now I want to show you how to put the cuff on the sleeve. So get your sleeve, and you want to match up this sleeve. This should be a little overlap there. You match that up, and you pin it or clip it, and then basically you clip everything, the whole thing around. So I'm just clipping the cuff to the sleeve. Okay, and then you should wind up, that should be folded over, with a pretty good match. If it doesn't match at the end here, what I did before is I just redid this seam here and took it in. Mine before was hanging over, so you can fiddle with that to make it match as pretty well. But so then that's what you got, your cuff on your sleeve, and all you do now is sew it across. I'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so it's sewn on the sleeve. All you do now is you flip this inside, and you're gonna go ahead and just flip that whole sleeve over. It's easier to see this way. You flip it over and you just sew right along here, and then press it. Probably want to press it before you sew it. And then you will have a nice cuff for your sleeve. I'm going to go ahead and do that with the second cuff and also with the waistband, which follows the same procedure. The cuffs and the waistband is done. Now I just wanted to touch base with you guys again before I start the collar. Again, this is right side facing up. You have your collar, the longer side. This is the right side. You find your notches. You line those up with the collar. Right side to right side. You clip everything together. And then you go ahead and you sew along there, and then just like the cuffs, we're going to fold that over. All right, we're almost done. All right, the jacket is done. It doesn't fit my dress form very well because it's very small, but I'll show you what it looks like on in a minute. The buttons, all you do is you take your pattern number 20 and line them up on the back side. And I actually did my buttonholes by hand and also used this tool. If you've never put in jean jacket buttons before, which I hadn't, you buy them in a pack. This had just enough for a jean jacket, and they come with the this tool and this little fastener. So this you poke in where you want your button, and then you just screw it on, screw this piece on there with this little tool. And it's actually super easy. So let me show you what it looks like on, and I'll give you a review of the pattern as well. Holy smokes, this jacket is warm. Super cool to make a jean jacket out of wool. It actually worked out, so I'm really pleased about it. I love the dark black. This fabric is really soft kind of wool, and my husband's already worn it outside and he loves it and got a compliment from his friend. Very happy about that. The sewing was easy, except for the top stitching was a bit tedious, and I actually gave up around, you're supposed to have top stitching around the cuffs and under the arms and around the top of the shoulders, but I did not do it. I only top stitched the front and the back, and I think it worked out fine. So I'm happy with that decision, but you're more than welcome to try to top stitch everything. It's just, it takes a lot of time. That's the most time consuming part about this coat. However, I love the pattern with some helpful instructions. I think it's easy to follow. There's nothing too complicated. Like I said, it just takes a long time. So if you want to get a close-up look, the back, the waist. It doesn't close on me, but again, I made this for my husband, so it fits him perfectly. I like the buttons I chose. You can get all sorts of different kinds of jean buttons on Amazon. They're really easy to put in, like I said earlier. So I feel like this pattern is something I'm going to try again, maybe with a different kind of fabric. I'll probably have a half a dozen of these by the time I'm done. Hope you enjoyed and hope it was helpful. And if you'd like to have any questions about the tutorial sew along, just let me know in the comments and I'll answer them. Other comments are welcome too, of course. So I will be sewing my cape next, so I hope you guys stick around. Thanks. One thing that I forgot to mention that I didn't even know when I was sewing this pattern is that it has a secret pocket. My husband figured that out. Right here, the way you put on the Welt Pockets, it's got a secret pocket right on the inside. So what I think I'll do is I'll put a little button there so it stays closed. But another awesome thing about this jacket. Thanks.